James and Ben back here for Odds Checker US. We're going to be previewing Saturday's UFC Paris card. Big, exciting event here. First card that they're going to be doing in France for the first time for the UFC. And we're going to start first on the main card. We've got Charles Jourdain taking on Nathaniel Wood, a bit of a late addition to this card. And right now it's the Canadian Charles Jourdain minus 135. The comeback on Nathaniel Wood plus 115. Which way are you going on this one, Ben?
This one, I will go Jourdain. I'm not super confident, to be honest with you, but I will lean Jourdain. Odds are pretty close on this one, but I mean, he's coming off that tough loss against Burgos, arguably won. I mean, you could make a case for him in that fight. It was a very close fight, and that's kind of been his trend, right? He's been in a lot of close fights. I mean, you look at his last losses, except for the submission loss to Arosa. I mean, he's been in that split decision against Andre Fili. He had that really close decision, or that draw actually, against Copulov. So, I mean, he's been in a lot of close fights, and I think that's kind of his issue. But I think he can get it done in this one because, Nathaniel Wood, we've seen him go those hard 15 minutes, but I just don't know if he has enough on the feet to stand and trade with Jourdain. I do think he could land a takedown. I mean, Jourdain, we've seen him too comfortable on his back at times, but I don't know if Wood is going to be able to get him there enough in this fight. I do think this one plays out kind of more on the feet. And in that case, I have to side with Jourdain here. But again, not super confident. Because if Wood gets a takedown early in this fight, I do think he can kind of just lay on top, maybe grind out a boring decision win, and just land a decision based on control time. But I will take Jourdain.
I'm also going Jourdain here, Canadian bias aside. I always like a guy that's competed in the weight class longer. This is only Wood's second fight at 145, and part of the reason he hasn't been in that hasn't been a bantamweight is because he needs a lot of time to cut down to the weight class, and he was just missing out on fights. Like there would be opportunities, and he wasn't sure if he could make weight. So, obviously, probably a good frame for the weight class. They have the same reach advantage, although Jourdain a little bit taller here. But what it comes down to for me is kind of what you mentioned there. Jourdain, he's in a lot of close fights, and they're against really good opposition. I thought he did beat Shane Burgos. I also thought that, some of the fights that he's had, like against Andre Fili, like they're close fights, right? And these are top ranked opponents that he's fighting. Wood, not so much. Now, Wood got a really nice win in his last matchup against Charles Rosa, but Charles Rosa is not, he's sort of a borderline UFC guy at this point. And while he was very dominant, I don't know if we can take too much away from that performance. I think it stays standing. I think Jourdain stuffs some of the takedowns. You would think at this point Jourdain's worked on his, getting taken down a lot because it is one of his weaknesses. But I think stand-up wise, you got to give the edge to Charles Jourdain here. Maybe look at the over in this one. These guys are two extremely durable fighters. I don't believe Wood has even been finished. Actually, Wood has been finished in the UFC, but I just think in general, I could see this one going to the judges' scorecards. Maybe you look at that play here, but I think even at minus 135, Jourdain, like I said, more of the mainstay in the weight class. I think there is a play there potentially here, but I'm going with Charles Jourdain. Fought better opposition, more of a mainstay in the weight class. I'm going to be picking him on the main card there.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that move also in that weight also gives me less confidence that Nathaniel Wood can land those takedowns because, he's fighting up a weight class for only the second time, like you said. So, I mean, that eliminates a little bit of that grappling edge that was probably there. So just another reason to like Jourdain there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Okay, we're going to jump all the way ahead here to the Nakrat Hasparas and John McDessie fight. And right now the odds makers have Hasparas at minus 200, the comeback on the Bull plus 170. A bit of an interesting backstory. Two former training partners at TriStar. A lot of bad blood here. This is the fight they've tried to book for years, and it's finally coming to fruition here on Saturday. Who are you liking here?
Yeah, I don't like it for the line, but I do like Nazareth in this one. I mean, McDessie, he's a full decade older now. He's coming off, I think it's 18 months that he's been off now. So, I mean, he's been off for a little while. He's getting up there in age. And he's fighting Nazareth, who he has really good boxing. I mean, he just lost to two really good stand-up fighters. Lost to Bobby Knuckles, lost to Dan Hooker. So, I mean, those are two tough fights to lose on the feet. But he does have very good boxing. He's very technical. And, I like him. He's pretty well-rounded. But I mean, you weren't going to be able to beat Dan Hooker or Bobby Green on the feet. In the kind of people that are kind of one-dimensional on the feet, just because he does a lot of the same stuff, throws the same combos, that kind of stuff. But I do like his creative boxing style. He invests in the body a lot, and I think that will be something that will be important in this fight. I think if he can land early body shots on McDessie, because I mean, he's been proven to be kind of a slow starter, and he's getting up there in age, 18 months off. I think if all of that comes together and Nazareth just invests in the body early, which we've seen him do before, I think he'll be able to kind of wear him down and win, maybe by knockout. But I mean, McDessie, like you said, he's kind of proven to be tough to put away. So I don't know. I don't love a prop in this one, but he has kind of too high of a line to just back straight. So I'm not really sure how to play him. I'll decide before the weekend, but I think he does win the fight. I just don't know if it can be a knockout or if it'll be by decision, but I think it's one of those two.
Stay away from this fight. That would be my recommendation. Two really unpredictable guys. McDessie, I mean, you look at the fact that he's fought a lot better opposition. He's been in the UFC, I think, since 2010. So he's been a mainstay for a while. He's fought, the likes of Cowboy Cerrone, just a lot of really interesting opponents throughout his career. But you mentioned it there, the long layoff. He has a ton of injuries and he's 37. That does not bode well for a fighter taking on an up-and-comer here in Nazareth. Now, here's the thing with Nazareth. I haven't been that impressed with him, to be honest. The Dan Hooker, the Bobby Green fight, those were fights that weren't even close. I thought Green and Hooker clearly won those. Nice win over Rafa Garcia in between there. But outside of that, just it seems like when he gets that step up, he tends to falter. So I don't really think he's kind of like a ranked opponent at this point. So I actually think the matchmaking here is kind of on point. Now, you mentioned maybe a finish here. He's only got one stoppage victory, and that was back in 2019. I don't know if he'll finish McDessie. To me, the only way he does is if McDessie is so broken at this point that he ends up getting stopped here. But yeah, honestly, do not play this fight. I don't trust Nasrat, even in this spot at -200. McDessie could surprise. He does have knockout power. I just don't know what type of McDessie we're going to get. Like maybe we get the old McDessie that does this, spinning back fist knockout. I can see that happening here, honestly. So, but I at the same time, I can't play McDessie because he's 37 and he's coming off a long layoff and he has a litter of injuries. I just don't feel confident picking that. So I'll pick Nasrat just because he is the younger guy and, he should win this fight, but there's no play for me in this fight. I would recommend staying away. I don't trust either guy, to be honest. So.
The over 2.5 is -220 I'm seeing. So the books definitely think this one's going to a decision. And like you said, Nazareth, not really a finisher, at least recently. McDessie basically has decision machine. So, I mean, maybe has, if you're going to take Nazareth, maybe take him by decision. Just to knock that juice down. But yeah, I'd say little confidence in that pick.
I'm not even doing that. I'm just staying away. Again, I literally could see McDessie maybe pulling off an upset knockout or seeing, Nasrat doing the same thing. I don't know. So it's just, to me, they're two unpredictable guys. But like I said, we'll go with Nasrat on this one. Okay, moving up to middleweight division, we've got Alessio Ditrico taking on Roman Copulov. And right now the odds makers have Ditrico as a slight favorite here at -115. Come back and Copulov, -105. Who are you going in this one?
This is a really tough one. And, the odds even suggest that, I mean, as close to a pick 'em as you can get. I mean, this is two clashing styles here in the fact that, you also have two guys who just haven't been able to get it going inside the UFC. I mean, Ditrico, I don't know what his record in the UFC is, but he just has not had a lot of momentum that he's been able to get. I mean, when he gets a win, it doesn't seem like he's able to get that back-to-back win. I mean, he did get that win over Marquez on a back-to-back win, but I mean, rattled off 3 losses after that. So, I mean, he's been struggling to get momentum. And then you look across the octagon and Copulov, 0-2 inside the UFC. So both these guys really need a win here. We should expect the best version of them coming out, given that fact. But, I mean, Ditrico, he's just been way too hittable on the feet. You see his chin high. Sometimes he's just not moving his head enough. He's been very hittable on the feet. He's just getting hit clean too often. I think that's been his downfall. And he finds himself fighting, in the pocket too much, whereas he finds most of his success kind of at range. So I think on the other side, Copulov, kind of the opposite. He is a very low volume fighter, or at least he has been inside the UFC. He's been very low volume and he kind of relies on his power, which could be a factor in this fight if Alessio chooses to go that path. But I think he can keep it at range. I think that if he just keeps his fight on the outside and he lands more volume, as he usually does, he should be able to get the win over Roman. I just think Roman's not going to land enough in this fight unless it is a knockout, which could happen. But I don't know. I have to take Alessio here just with these odds. If he was like a higher favorite, I wouldn't back him with any juice. But the fact that they're a pick him, I think I can make him the play. So I'm going to take Alessio.
I'm also taking Alessio, but this is another fight I would personally just stay away from. I don't know what Alessio we're going to get. The one kind of win you glanced over, it happened. But Joaquin Buckley, that was a really good win. And I remember that was a big upset at the time because Buckley, of course, with his highlight reel finishes and, just to see him get that done was very impressive. So are we going to get that one? Or are we going to get the guy who got knocked out in 17 seconds by Razak Al Hassan? I don't know. So that's where things get tricky. The reason I like Ditrico over Copulov is a couple things. Number one, he's been a little bit more active. If you look at Copulov's just had one fight since 2020. Ditrico's also been more of a mainstay in the UFC. He's been fighting since 2016 in the promotion. So that's something, where maybe we've seen a little bit more battle tested, but even at the odds that they are, this is another fight I'm just going to stay away from, but I will pick Ditrico to get it done. Maybe a look at the fight doesn't go the distance. I could see a finish here. I know Copulov's, I think his last two have gone. Oh, actually, no, he actually got submitted in the third round, but even then, third round finish there. So a bit later, and then you got all these finishes outside the UFC, but you look at who he's fighting, not to the caliber there. So maybe you look at that, but honestly, this is another one I'm staying away from. But don't worry, I have some plays. They're just not here right now. They will come a bit later. So yeah, Ditrico's going to be the pick.
Yeah, at least Alessio, he's had those big wins, right? He's got that one over Hakeem Buckley. He actually went the distance with Kevin Holland. I know that was a while ago, but he went the distance with Kevin Holland in a fight that, Kevin Holland could have finished him because he has a lot of those, highlight reel nice finishes. So I will say I don't see him getting knocked out in this fight. That knockout again in his last fight, Al Hassan, that was a bad loss, but does he get back-to-back knockout losses? I don't think so. And, unless if Copulov's going to a decision with him, I think this is a fight that Alessio will win. Because we've at least seen better flashes of a fighter from Alessio, whereas we haven't seen that yet from Copulov. So at least there's that. So yeah, I like Alessio a lot here.
Okay, next fight. This one's a little bit easier for me to break down here. Robert Whittaker, Marvin Vettori. Biggest shame in this fight is that it's only 3 rounds. This would really be a 5-rounder with what's on the line here. They're both highly ranked middleweights. And right now, the Reaper, Robert Whittaker, minus 230. The comeback on Vettori, plus 195. Which way are you going here?
Man, this is, I want to hear what you have to say because I'm very torn on this fight. I want you to go first, actually.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No, listen, we can do that. That's fine. I see this a lot differently. I really like Robert Whittaker here. This is a guy that was very close to defeating Israel Adesanya. In fact, I still get people giving me flack for saying that Adesanya won because some people feel like Robert did enough to beat Adesanya. And to me, that's the X factor in this fight. Like, as good as Vettori's been, I know he's only lost twice in the UFC to Israel Adesanya. The fights were much, and the second fight with Whittaker was much closer than any of the fights that Vettori's had. And I know people always reference that first fight that he had with Adesanya back in 2018, which was a split decision. I recommend you go watch that. I still think Adesanya won that clearly. I know, again, Vettori had some success in that fight, but we're talking about Adesanya's second UFC fight. He had to fight Vettori, and that's maybe why it was a bit closer. But we saw the most recent version of Adesanya fight Whittaker last. And, I hate using MMA math, but I think in this case, you can really take a lot away from it. Whittaker looked a lot better, and Whittaker has better wins overall. Gaslam, that was a really good win prior to that. Jared Cannonier, I know Cannonier hurt himself early, but still, Cannonier's got a cannon of a right hand that could knock out anyone. Whittaker was able to survive that. Darren Till, a lot of knockout power too, was able to beat him. With Vettori, some of these, Paulo Costa was good, but again, that was a fight that was at 205 during fight week. I don't think Costa was really in that fight, so to speak. And then the Holland fight, Holland's at welterweight now. Hermanson, short notice fight. Hermanson broke his orbital bone. Wasn't able to finish Hermanson. Figured he might have. Look, Vettori's, we know he's got a good ground game. We know his stand-ups come a long way. I just think Whittaker, you can't ignore the resume, and we always forget the 2 wins over Yoel Romero. Those are very impressive too. Whittaker's tough to take out, so I don't see Vettori, and with it only being a 3-round fight, I don't think Vettori's going to finish him there, early on. And also, I don't think Robert's going to get a finish either, because if you look at the last time he finished a fight, it was back in 2017. This is a guy that typically goes the distance here. So again, it's only a 3-round fight. The play here is Robert Whittaker by decision. I think there's no question about that. You're going to get better value than minus 230. That's the play here. Or if you want to play it really safe, the fight goes the distance. Again, it's a 3-round fight. I do not see this fight ending within the 3 rounds, with both guys being extremely durable. Again, Vettori's never been finished. Whittaker, the one loss at middleweight, the one stoppage loss he had at middleweight was against Adesanya, and we've seen since then that was an off night for Whittaker. Since then, the Whittaker that's fought Gaslam, that's fought Cannonier, that guy is not going to get finished in a fight like this. So unless something crazy happens, I'd be very shocked if we see a finish here. But Robert Whittaker by decision is the play for me. Again, what it comes down to is Whittaker has just beaten better competition, and it gives me more confidence in picking him than picking Vettori. So that's how I'm going. Maybe that helps out your pick here, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree. We do agree. The only thing I will say, the thing that was kind of making me lean not towards Vettori, but a little tougher on this fight, just because Whittaker is the minus 220 favorite, is that Vettori's stand up, like you said, it has come a long way. You think of him as just that dominant grappler wrestler. But I mean, that fight against Costa, I mean, that was impressive on the feet. He landed like nearly 200 strikes and arguably beat him on the feet. So I mean, that's a good fight because Costa, we saw his stand up against Luke Rockhold, and that looked he's really impressive on the feet. And Marvin Vettori stood in there with him, and he looked excellent on the feet. But I mean, Whittaker, his only 2 losses since moving to middleweight were to Israel Adesanya. And that second fight, like you said, was very close. Adesanya probably won, but it was a very close fight, and that's Adesanya. So, I mean, his only 2 losses, he's 11-2 since moving to middleweight. And 2 of those wins were to Yoel Romero, who is a really amazing wrestler. And so, Romero, I think he landed a few takedowns in each of those. But Whittaker was still able to get through adversity and win because he's probably the best striker in the middleweight division besides Adesanya.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just how he's going to win this fight. Vettori, he may land a takedown or 2, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Not only is Whittaker hard to take down, but if he gets taken down, he gets up very quickly. So I don't think, even if Vettori is landing 1 or 2 takedowns, he's not going to get a lot of control time. He's not going to land a lot of ground strikes. So Whittaker will be able to get right back up. I see this fight going very poorly for Vettori if he can't take him down and keep him down, which Whittaker has shown that it's not an easy thing to do. So I think this fight ultimately is Whittaker by decision, just to knock that juice down. If it were 5 rounds, maybe I'd look at the knockout prop. But like you said, he's been going to decisions a lot. Vettori has never been finished inside the UFC, or I think actually ever, even on the regionals, but never been finished in the UFC. So I think this has to be Whittaker by decision.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so main event, Cyril Gane and Tai Tuivasa. And right now, Cyril Gane, the biggest betting favorite on this card, minus 550. The comeback on Bam Bam is plus 400. Ben, does Bam Bam have a shot here? Who are you picking?
Well, I will say it is a heavyweight fight, so the underdog always has a shot. I'd say that is probably the only thing going for him, is that he has a ton of power, and he has been landing some very impressive knockouts. But I mean, Cyril Gane, besides that fight against Ngannou, I mean, he is a technical machine. Probably the most technical heavyweight we have ever seen. His cardio is excellent. Excellent grappling against Tai, who doesn't really have a grappling upside, not much of a grappling game. So, I mean, this is a fight that will probably be very boring. As much as you don't want a heavyweight main event to be boring, if Gane wants this to be a boring fight, he can make it a boring fight. I've seen a few interviews where he's like, oh, no, I'm going to bring the action to him. I'm going to be all action. But at the end of the day, you never know when they get in the octagon, they touch gloves. Gane might just stay on the outside and pick him apart with his leg kicks and just rangy striking. And at the end of the day, that's probably what it'll end up being. But if he actually does engage in a war, Tai has a pretty good shot at landing a clean knockout. Because, I mean, we've seen him land those impressive knockouts on his way up to the top now. I mean, that Derek Lewis knockout was awesome. So, I don't know. It's a heavyweight fight. So you have that upside. I think Tai is plus 600 the last time I looked. I haven't looked today, but when I looked at it yesterday, Tai was plus 600 for a knockout. So I'd say, if anything, Gane by decision and take Tai plus 600 knockout, because that's really the 2 ways I see this going. I don't really see Gane finishing him if he chooses that boring fight. But if he engages in that war, maybe Tai can land it. You never know.
I agree. The odds are kind of crazy here. I definitely like Cyril Gane in this fight. I actually think he can finish this. And here's why, because Tuivasa has not gone 5 rounds before. That's something that Gane has in his back pocket. He's had a number of main events. We know he can go the distance. And here's the thing. Tuivasa is not bringing anything to the table he hasn't seen before. His last 2 fights were against Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis, 2 guys that hit, as I think Ngannou actually probably hits harder than Tuivasa, to be honest. And do you remember that Derek Lewis fight? Derek Lewis nearly finished Tuivasa in that first round. I don't know how he survived. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen, where Tuivasa survives, and then out of nowhere in the second, he knocks out Derek Lewis. And looking at Lewis's last performance, where he was finished fairly quickly, I think we now know that Lewis is kind of on the decline here. So there's a little bit of evidence there. I think this is just way too big of a step up, and Cyril Gane is way too smart to fall for the game that Derek Lewis did, which was try and go for broke, and then you end up getting tired and you get finished. I don't think Gane's going to do that. He's seen everything. He's seen a Tuivasa before in his fights with Ngannou and Derek Lewis as well. It's in France. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. First card in France. He's headlining it, but I think Cyril Gane's way too smart here. The reason I think finish is because I could see Tuivasa getting a bit tired. I think, his game plan is to go take his head off. Well, how's he going to look in 3, 4, and 5? you maybe look at Gone, fourth or fifth round prop, or maybe even look at Gone. Right now you can get Gone by TKO at like plus money. I think that's definitely worth the stab just because of and I could see it as well, where again, we get another kind of not so exciting fight like against Volkov and against Rosenstruik. Yeah. But I just think with Tuivasa, the fact that we haven't seen that experience of him going later, I just think that Gane's going to pick his shots. Tuivasa is going to get tired and he's going to get like a TKO finish, not like a, one punch on the ground type finish, but I think Gane is going to go out there and win in spectacular fashion late in the fight. So I would say maybe look at that knockout prop here. No point in betting a minus 550, even in parlays. My rule in general is you don't, if you're going to parlay, don't do anything over like minus 300, but that's a topic for another day. But I think this is Gane's fight to lose. I'd be very shocked if Tuivasa won this fight. And I've been wrong. Yeah. I did pick Derek Lewis against Tuivasa, and he's obviously got an iron chin, but I just think we're talking about one of the smartest fighters in the weight class in Gane. I just can't see him falling prey to Tai Tuivasa in this one. So we're going to take Gane by finish in the fourth round.
Now, right. I was just going to say one interesting thing is that we haven't seen Gane's grappling in a while. I mean, he hasn't had a submission win since he beat Mays by submission in 2019. But I wouldn't be surprised, you're saying with the tiring factor, if we see Tai slow down in 3-4-5, not necessarily Gane throwing in the feet, but what if he decides to grapple with it? I see that.
That could happen too. Yeah, maybe you look at inside the distance. That's a good point. Yeah. Maybe to save yourself. I'll never forget a couple weeks ago that burned me pretty bad with Terrence McKinney getting a submission win instead of a knockout. So maybe if you want to play it safe, you do that as well. But yeah.
Because in Gane's mind, even if Tai is tired, Gane is a smart fighter, and he knows that at any point in this fight, Tai could, it only takes one shot, especially at heavyweight. So if Gane is smart, maybe he decides to grapple when Tai is tired and he knows he's up. Let's say it's in the fourth round. He knows he's up 3-0 on the scorecards. Instead of trying to, stand and trade, even though Tai is tired, maybe he tries to grapple with him. I could see that being very plausible. And Gane is plus 650 by submission on FanDuel right now.
There you go.
So I'd say that might be worth a shot just because we haven't seen his grappling in a while, but we know he has good grappling. And Tai, he was subbed by, it's been a while, but he was subbed by Sergey Spivak. So, I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Great card this Saturday. Can't believe this is a fight night, not a pay-per-view. Pretty stacked event here. We'll be back next week to preview UFC 279 for myself, for Ben. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the card. Also, earlier card this weekend, main card at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you set your alarms early. Hope you guys have a great weekend and hope you guys cash those bets.